Listen to me, my child. If you have ever pulled a loaf of bread out of your modern kitchen oven and wondered why it looks pale, why the crust feels like soft rubber instead of crackling glass, and why the inside is dense like a wet sponge, I want you to take a deep breath and forgive yourself. It is not your hands that failed. It is not your flour that was weak. And it is certainly not because you did not spend $3,000 on one of those shiny European ovens with computer screens and built-in steam injectors that appliance companies try to sell you. When I was a little girl in the stone hills of Tuscany, my grandmother Rosa did not have digital thermometers. She did not have electric heating coils or fancy non-stick baking pans. What she had was a wood-fired brick oven that had been glowing hot for 200 years, and in the winter, when the snow was high and the outdoor hearth was too cold to light, she had a single, heavy pitch-black cast-iron skillet that cost next to nothing and had already survived 2 world wars. With that one piece of seasoned iron, she baked bread with crusts so blistered, dark golden, and crisp that you could hear the loaf singing and crackling from across the kitchen table. Today, I am going to teach you the forgotten secret of that humble black pan. I am going to show you how a $15 cast iron skillet transforms any ordinary home oven into a blistering 500-degree stone hearth, and how you can bake artisan loaves that will make your whole house smell like an old Italian village bakery. Let us begin by understanding the great lie of the modern kitchen oven. You see, modern ovens are designed to vent out air. They have little exhaust vents that constantly push hot moisture out, so that your roast chicken browns and your cakes do not get soggy. But when it comes to bread, venting out moisture is a death sentence. In the first 10 to 15 minutes of baking, raw dough needs intense, concentrated steam. If that steam escapes, the dry heat of the oven cooks the outside of your dough instantly into a hard, rigid shell before the yeast inside has a chance to fully expand. The loaf gets trapped inside its own skin. It cannot rise to its full height, and the delicate starches on the surface dry out instead of caramelizing into those sweet, glassy blisters we dream about. In a traditional village bakery, the massive brick dome is soaked in moisture from burning wood, and hundreds of loaves baking together, creating a natural steam chamber. But in your home kitchen, you do not have a stone dome. What you do have, if you listen to what I am about to tell you, is cast iron. Cast iron is pure thermal muscle. Unlike thin aluminum or modern nonstick tins that lose their heat the moment you open the oven door, a heavy cast iron skillet holds on to heat with relentless grip. When you preheat that skillet until it is smoking hot, it acts exactly like the ancient stone floor of a Tuscan hearth. And when you cover that skillet with a heavy lid or invert a second skillet on top, you create a tiny, airtight micro-oven right inside your stove. Every drop of moisture that evaporates from your dough gets trapped inside that sealed iron dome, creating a furious sauna of pure steam that bathes the loaf, softens the skin, and allows the dough to burst upward to 3 times its size before the crust ever begins to harden. Now, before we talk about the heat, let me give you the simple farmhouse dough recipe so you can have your hands in the flour right away. You do not need 20 ingredients, and you do not need an electric stand mixer that roars like a tractor. All you need are 3 cups of unbleached flour, 1 1/4 cups of warm spring water, 1/2 cup of active bubbly starter or pasta madre, and 1 heavy teaspoon of coarse sea salt. In a large ceramic bowl, pour your warm water and stir in your active starter with a wooden spoon until it turns into a cloudy, milky liquid. Add your flour and salt and bring it together with your fingers just until there are no dry white spots left. The dough will look shaggy and rough like a wet clump of mud, and that is exactly how it should be. Do not fight it. Do not stand there sweating and pounding the dough against your counter for 20 minutes. Cover the bowl with a clean, damp linen towel and let it rest for 30 minutes on your counter. During that quiet rest, the flour drinks the water all on its own. The little particles naturally weave themselves into a strong, stretchy web without you lifting a finger. After 30 minutes, wet your hands with a little water. Reach under the edge of the dough. Pull it up gently toward the ceiling and fold it over into the center. Turn the bowl a quarter turn and do it again, 4 times around the bowl, until the dough gathers into a smooth, plump ball. Do this simple stretch and fold 3 times over the next 2 hours. Then let the bowl sit in a warm corner of your kitchen until the dough has doubled in size and feels light and airy, like a pillow filled with summer clouds. When your dough is fermented and bubbly, tip it gently onto a lightly floured wooden board. Dust the top with a handful of stone ground flour. Shape it into a round ball by cupping your hands and pulling the dough toward you to create tension on the skin, and place it smooth side down into a cloth-lined bowl or wicker basket. Let it rest for its final rise while we prepare the fire. Now comes the crucial part, the iron and the fire. This is where most modern bakers make their first fatal mistake. They put raw, cold dough into a cold cast iron pan and put both into the oven together. If you do that, the bottom of your loaf will act like a wet sponge, soaking up heat too slowly while the top dries out, leaving you with a gummy, heavy bottom crust that sticks to the pan like glue. You must preheat the cast iron empty. Place your heavy skillet and its lid inside your oven on the middle rack, and turn your oven up to 475 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 245 degrees Celsius. Let that iron sit in that blazing heat for at least 45 minutes to an hour. You want that black metal to be so thoroughly saturated with thermal energy that the moment dough touches it, the bottom crust instantly sears and seals, sending a violent wave of heat straight up through the center of the loaf. While the pan is heating, take your shaped loaf out of the refrigerator or off the counter. Cut a piece of plain brown parchment paper slightly wider than your skillet. Carefully invert your dough onto the parchment paper so the smooth, taut top is facing up. Take a razor-sharp knife or a baker blade, hold it at a slight angle, and make one swift, confident slash across the top of the dough, about 1/2 inch deep. Do not saw back and forth like you are cutting wood. Make one smooth, clean incision from one side to the other. This cut is the doorway. When the heat hits the dough, the trap steam needs a designated path to burst open. If you do not slash the top, the steam will find its own way out, tearing ugly cracks through the bottom and sides of your loaf. Now put on your thickest dry oven mitts. Open the oven door, pull out the screaming hot cast iron skillet, and place it safely on your stovetop. Take the hot lid off. Grab the edges of the parchment paper holding your scored dough and lower it directly into the center of the smoking iron pan. Here is Nonna's special secret for maximum steam. Right before you drop the lid back on, toss 2 small ice cubes between the parchment paper and the hot iron wall of the pan, or mist the top of the dough with 2 quick sprays of pure spring water. The instant the ice touches the 500-degree iron, it will hiss and explode into a thick cloud of white steam. Immediately slam the heavy lid down to trap that steam inside. Return the covered skillet to the oven, close the door, and set your timer for 20 minutes. During these first 20 minutes, do not open the oven door. Do not peek. Do not let your curiosity steal the heat. Inside that dark iron chamber, magic is happening. The superheated steam is condensing on the cool surface of the raw dough, keeping the outer skin moist, elastic, and cool enough to allow the gases inside to expand rapidly. The loaf is rising to its absolute peak height, pushing open that slash you cut until it forms a proud, jagged ear. At the same time, the starch sugars on the surface are dissolving in the hot moisture, getting ready to caramelize into millions of microscopic glassy bubbles. When the 20 minutes are up, open the oven, carefully remove the heavy iron lid, and set it aside. The moment you take that lid off, you will see a pale, majestic, towering loaf that has fully blossomed. Now it is time for the fire to paint the bread. Lower your oven temperature slightly to 450 degrees Fahrenheit or 230 degrees Celsius, and let the bread bake uncovered in the open skillet for another 20 to 25 minutes. Without the lid, the trapped steam dissipates, and the direct, dry, radiant heat of the oven begins to toast the exterior. The pale dough will transform before your eyes, first turning golden yellow like summer wheat, then amber, and finally deepening into a rich, dark chestnut and mahogany color. Do not be afraid of a dark crust. A pale loaf is an unfinished loaf with no flavor. The deep, dark blisters around the ear are where the true, toasted, nutty caramel flavors of ancient grain reside. How do you know when the loaf is truly finished? You do not need a digital probe. Pull the skillet out, lift the loaf with a clean, dry towel, and tap the bottom of the bread with your knuckles. If it sounds hollow, like knocking on a sturdy wooden door, the moisture has properly cooked through and the crumb structure is set. Transfer the loaf immediately to a raised wire cooling rack. And now, my child, comes the hardest test of all, the law of patience. Listen closely to the bread as it sits on the wire rack. If your kitchen is quiet, you will hear a faint, delicate crackling sound. In Italy, we call this the singing of the bread. The hot interior steam is slowly escaping through the brittle crust, causing microscopic fractures to open all across the surface. You must never, under any circumstance, cut into a loaf of bread while it is still piping hot from the oven. I know the temptation is immense. I know the aroma of toasted grain and yeast filling your kitchen makes your mouth water. But if you slice into a hot loaf, the trapped steam inside will instantly condense into water droplets against your cold knife blade, turning the delicate, airy crumb into gummy, wet dough that sticks to your teeth. Let the loaf rest undisturbed on that wire rack for at least 1 full hour, or until the bottom feels completely cool to the touch of your bare palm. During this cooling hour, the starches inside finish setting and gelatinizing, locking in moisture so that the bread stays soft, fresh, and tender for days without needing a single chemical preservative. When you finally slice into it with a sharp, serrated knife, you will hear that glorious resounding crunch. You will see an open, glossy crumb riddled with uneven air pockets that glisten in the light, ready to catch pools of golden extra virgin olive oil and sweet farm butter. And what about your black iron skillet? When the baking is done and the pan has cooled down, you will find that the parchment paper kept it spotless. Never take harsh soap or metal scouring pads to Nonna's pan. Simply wipe the inside with a dry cloth. If you see a dry spot, rub a tiny drop of lard or olive oil into the warm iron with a towel to keep the metal seasoned, dark, and protected from rust. That pan will bake bread for your children and for your children's children long after modern electric gadgets have ended up in the scrap heap. You see, good bread was never about complicated machines or expensive technology. It has always been about understanding heat, respecting time, and honoring the simple wisdom of the hands that came before us. With 3 basic ingredients, a splash of water, and a $15 black iron pan, you have everything you need to bring the soul of the hearth back into your home. Until next time, this is Nonna Rosa. Feed your pasta Madre, bake with love, and never let commercial food steal the soul of your kitchen.